I'm Marie-Astrid Dubon, the Executive Director of CyberCap. For 25 years, CyberCap has been empowering underserved youth across Quebec through digital media and cybersecurity education, fostering both personal and professional development. I am delighted to welcome you to this panel presented as part of the International Economic Forum of the Americas in collaboration with the City of Montreal. In 2024, more than 60% of cities around the world were targeted by major cyber attacks. These attacks struck key public infrastructure, from transportation network to water and electricity services, revealing critical vulnerabilities in the urban system in our digital age. In this context, our discussion today aims to address a crucial question. How can we better protect global cities from cyber threats while maintaining public trust and the quality of its essential services? We are honored to welcome two high-level panelists who will complementary expertise spans the intersection of technology, public governance, and cybersecurity. Martin Guy Richard, welcome. You are the Chief Information Security Officer for the City of Montreal. You lead the city's cybersecurity strategies, one of the largest municipalities in Canada. Your role is essential in ensuring the resilience of municipal services and protecting citizens' data in a rapidly evolving digital urban environment. Fred Britton, welcome. You are Vice President of Cybersecurity at Knowledge Services and Executive Director for the government RAMP. As the former Chief Information Officer for the State of Maine, you bring extensive experience in implementing cybersecurity frameworks for public administration and in building public-private partnerships to enhance digital resilience. So let's start. As cybersecurity leaders in national and municipal context, which areas of cities do you currently view as most vulnerable to cyber attacks, and what systemic of cascading consequences could result from the compromise of these critical infrastructures? Fred, would you like to start to answer?
I would, and thanks for having me here. It's delightful. We're going to talk a lot about cities, but coming from the rural state of Maine, I also want to make sure we talk a little bit about those who have far less from the standpoint of resources. But going back to the initial part of your question was, what are the things that we worry about most in our cities or smaller municipalities? And I would say we've heard it already a number of times. Just this morning, our utilities. The actors are out there to shut off our water, to shut off our power. Just this last week, I was telling Marie I had a doctor's appointment, and I went in, and it was a Wednesday, and the hospital had had its entire network and every computer shut down since Sunday. I walked in, I hadn't paid attention to the local news. They didn't know I was coming in. The doctor was delighted to see me and said, "So why are you here? What did we talk about last time?" That's part's fine. They had surgeries. They fortunately had a list and were able to call people and say, "You will be rescheduled, we don't know when." They told ambulances, "Do not bring patients here, and by the way, the nearest hospital is probably another hour away." There's no question that people will die as a result of this cyber attack, and they don't know how long it will last. So when we stop and think about this, these are the things that worry us. It's our institutions that breathe life into us, whether it's the water, the electricity, healthcare. And so that's what worries us the most. And then when we sort of jump back to these smaller towns and what they face, there's a little town on the Maine side of the Canadian border that called me, and the chief of police said, "Fred, I've called a number of people, they won't tell me what to do. I'm really good on the gun range, and I really know my way around a traffic stop." I don't know what this ransomware business is, and they had one guy who was a contractor who came for 4 hours a week and was their full IT person. When those systems are infected, those are connected to other systems. Your statewide, regional, we have 911, is that what you guys, something similar here?
We do have it.
Yeah, okay. I knew you had something similar, but so 911, and there's a ripple effect as that thing, those cross, and in my time at the state, I did have circumstances where I actually had to disconnect a city network from the state network because of the danger to the state. So these are the things to think about from my perspective.
So what keeps me not sleeping at night?
A few things we know about.
Yeah, a few things. But like you said, like Fred said, all the utilities, the water treatment plants, everything that we create for the citizens. But another thing that you did not say is the traffic lights. So what happens if a hacker enter our traffic light systems and switch everything to green? That will be chaos. So the infrastructure for me that are the greatest vulnerability are the water treatment plants, the traffic light system, 911, because 911, we have one of the biggest 911 system in Canada. I think we're compared to Toronto, so we're quite huge. And we need to protect these infrastructure because it's services that we give to all the citizens. So to me, those are the biggest system that can be attacked by hackers, by a nation-state hacker or nation-state hacker group. We had, well, I'm lucky because at the city of Montreal, we did not have major attacks so far, but in the past 2 or 3 years, we had 3 major attacks in Montreal that were with agencies or with boroughs or other cities that are attached to Montreal. We had Montréal now last year that were attacked. They lost everything. But fortunately for them, we managed their water plan and we managed the traffic lights for them. We had 2 other agencies that went upside down because of hackers. The only damage that they had is leak of data. So it's not that, well, it's a big of a deal, but for the citizen and for the environment of the city, it's less a big of a deal compared to a closure of the water treatment plant. So what happens in Montreal if something bad happened to the water treatment plant? Of course, we have some, I don't know what's the word in English, reservoir. We have some water tank somewhere to give out the water to the citizen, but we need to have the resources to protect those systems.
And what was interesting, you were mentioning that you have a limited budget, maybe both of you, and sometimes you have to make hard decisions, and the importance of bringing awareness among citizens to say, well, you know, you want a library, but perhaps also we need to invest to make sure that you are safe. And the traffic lights, I'm sure no one's think about it, but that's a good one.
Like you said, we don't have an unlimited budget. Even if I want to have unlimited budget, I would not have unlimited human resource to do the work. So what we need to do is, when we do the annual assessment of the cybersecurity programs or all the initiative in our big cybersecurity program, we need to assess the risk of everything inside the city, and afterward, we need to prioritize where will we put our investment this year, next year, and so on. We're not a private company, so we cannot get money like doing an IPO or create a new product, sell it, and do some profits. So the money that we have at the City of Montreal is very limited, so that's what we do. We prioritize by, I like to say by color, even though it's not really like that, but we do a red, yellow, and green risk. So of course, everything that is red would be prioritized for the next year. Everything that is yellow, it means that we know there's a risk there, but we are willing to accept the risk or to mitigate the risk, because if something bad happens, yeah, everything is important, but the damage will be less, and there's going to be less collateral damage in a yellow risk than in a red one. As an example, a red risk will be, like I said, the traffic light or the water treatment plants. But the yellow risk will be probably the website of the City of Montreal. If it gets attacked, it's only an information site, so we need to protect it, of course. We don't want it to be defaced, but if we have money to invest, I'm going to invest it in the 911 or the water treatment plant.
Hopefully we don't have any hacker here, and they're not going to say, oh, let me go into the City of Montreal website because it's not safe.
Oh, it's well protected. Good luck.
Well, faced with increasingly sophisticated attacks, how can cities strengthen their digital resilience without compromising service quality for citizens? And is it possible to balance cybersecurity, digital agility, and innovation? Martin, do you want to start?
That's a very good question. So how do we balance it? How do we balance everything? Well, first of all, we need to analyze what needs to be done. Can you repeat the question? I forgot.
Like it's agility, like is it possible to balance cybersecurity, digital agility and innovation and not sacrifice the service to citizens?
Exactly.
By doing that?
Well, the thing is, it's not the core business of the City of Montreal to have a cybersecurity program. What's the core business of a city? It's to give services to the citizen. So what we need to do is always keep in mind that there's a greater program at the City of Montreal, which is called Montréal 2030. In French, it's Montréal 2030. It's available on the website. So all the strategy of Montréal 2030, this is what needs to be done for the citizen. So when there's a priority in Montréal 2030, we look at it. Can we innovate on the IT side? Can we do something to accelerate the service to the citizen? And when you talk about IT, when you talk about innovation and technology, in the background, there's always cybersecurity. We always need to keep in mind that whatever we do on the technological side, we need to protect it. We need to assess the risk. We need to analyze everything to make sure that the way we're doing it is the way that the citizen wants it.
Fred, what do you think?
I just heard a lot of good stuff. So I'm going to just piggyback on a couple of things that Martin talked about. And I'll go back to some of the answers on the first question, because I think they're tied, it's all tied together. And Martin, you talked about an annual assessment of your cyber program. And that was something that I have found invaluable. And as we were thinking about a lot of digital innovation and things coming down the line, and but we want to secure it at the highest level, except we're funded for the lowest level, was the conversation about that risk management and where's your stance in all of that. So in my case, we brought in a third party because I was actually going to end up in front of our elected officials, our legislature, to ask for money. So we brought in an external assessment agency that used a standardized framework and went across everything, and they came back to us with a maturity score. And by the way, if you Google Maine Cyber 39, you'll see this was done on a hot mic and picked up by the press, and the 39 is out of 100. That was our maturity score. But what we were able to do with that was then begin a risk management conversation. And there are a lot of studies out there with these standard frameworks that say, what's the likelihood that this is going to happen and what's the impact if it happens? And you can kind of weight what you want to do next based on both the vulnerability and the impact if it were to happen. And so creating a plan and then going back in front and saying, if you give us X amount of money, I'll come back in 2 years and we will be at a 54 out of 100. And it puts in a position, first thing is it creates some transparency around cyber because it's a black box as far as many of the policymakers are concerned. They know that no matter what they give you to fix cyber, you'll always come back for more.
Always.
Always. And it's not as, if you give money to an emergency agency and you can see the fire truck, that's tangible. Cyber isn't tangible to them. So putting some numbers around that, it then leads to the real question around the agility, is having real conversations with governance, where cyber becomes transparent and the level of risk, as you talked about, Martin, where you have folks who say, our job is to deliver this service. IT and cyber folks can come in and say, here's that risk level. In this area, we could do these things. And then it becomes a conversation about accepting that, but based on the business needs. And not that black box. So I always found that bringing that in and actually having real metrics that policymakers could understand, and it wasn't just the engineer saying it's going to be bad, was really helpful. So love what you guys are doing.
Your score was 39. I will not say the score of the City of Montreal because, of course, we did some external assessment. But is it our core business to be 100 out of 100? Because to be very high, we need to have a lot of money and a lot of human resources. So where do we stop?
It depends on your business line, right? We had 140 different agencies serving different avenues in the public. But if you're a small business and you walk into me and say, what do I need to do? And I say, well, here's 320 controls that are best practice for you to meet, and you need a team, and your business is, you know, 2 guys in a truck. Like, you're not gonna do that. So you go back and you say, what is the nature of the business, and what are the key things? We do know that if you do email filtering, train your employees, do multi-factor, and it's like one other thing, over 70% of attacks will be eliminated just by doing that. If you have backups, you are now in a position where not only will you survive, but you'll be above 80% at the recovery rate. So it depends on where you're coming from, too. Just like, that's the best you can do right now, but that's a huge win that doesn't require all these other things.
So basically, like, what we did is we analyzed everything, and of course, there's some area where we're at a low level out of a score out of 5, but we decided that, okay, this area we need to be at 5, but the other one, a 2 is acceptable. So like you said, it's a risk assessment that we need to do, and we can accept that risk at that level, but this one, we cannot accept it, so this is why we need to be at 5. At 5, it's a water treatment plant.
I love it. Yeah, I always joke about if you have a system for counting trout in Maine, maybe that doesn't need to be at a high level, but if you're talking about utility systems.
Yeah, everything cannot be at 5, but I know you talked a lot, you worked with smaller city than Montreal. Where are they in their level of cybersecurity, in their assessment?
It's particularly low, and Marie, we're going to wander way off topic.
We're going to come back.
And we're actually going to talk about this subject, but you go ahead.
Yeah, well, to speak to that, they are at a very low level. So, you know, in my time as state CIO, and it was actually the January before COVID hit, was my very last trip, and it was to Washington, D.C., and I met 2 other state colleagues to speak with members of the federal legislature around how do we help states and how do we help locals. And it took a number of years, but about 2-3 years later, a bill came out called the State and Local Cyber Grant Program. And it was designed to help locals and have the states coordinate for those locals, provide funding, and requiring a model of collaboration and governance that spanned it. And it wasn't enough money to get a lot done, but it opened doors. So some states did things like, we're going to use some funds and we're just going to buy cyber awareness training for every little local government. And it was an attempt to try to, you know, the tide raises all boats. It wasn't as valuable to the big cities who already had some capacity, but it did start to make a difference. It required matching. It actually caused states to have to put the matching up. So it really changed the dynamic. Now, this may not be the last thing I talk about where that grant program is in jeopardy with some of the changes that are going on in the federal government. We don't know if it will be continued, but it was a great value in making that change and start to give them some resources, whether it's and even central incident response teams and things like that. So, coordination.
Thank you.
And we actually, I don't know if it's the reality in the States, and we're not doing any politics here, but I see in cybersecurity there's a lot of exchange of best practices, and when you see something, you want to help each other. And do you think that's something possible, like working with international cities or governments so you can learn from each other's?
Like I told both of you over the phone, I really believe that there's no competition in cybersecurity. Whatever happens to my neighbor you said it at the beginning, can affect what I need to protect. It can affect me directly, and then it can affect you and your neighbors. So there's no competition in cybersecurity, and we need to work together. Like I'm part of not a select group, I'm part of a group where there's CISO from banks, insurance company, from other company in Quebec. And when something bad happened to this company, or we know something bad happened to one of our neighbors, the first thing we do, we communicate the IOC. So we communicate what we found out, the raw data in the Telegram channel, but trust me, it's protected. There's no journalist there. So we communicate the IOC on the Telegram channel as soon as we found out about it. So this is why I always say there's no cybersecurity, there's no competition in cybersecurity. We need to help each other.
Fred, you talked a little bit earlier about transparency. So these cyber attacks have a direct impact on public trust. What are the most effective levers in terms of communication, transparency, or governance for maintaining or regaining that trust after an attack? Fred, do you want to start?
Sure. The first thing that happens when you see that something that you have done has left the door open to the bad guys, and there is that human response of, uh-oh, I think I'm in trouble. But then follows all that work around, well, how do we communicate it? How do we get the optics just right? And it is shocking to me how much time can be lost. And by the way, during that time, the public has found out, trust me. Something has leaked to the media, it's in the press, and now the government is being questioned. And there are laws around minimum reporting times. Certainly across some of our states, I can tell you that some of the states themselves don't meet it. And what happens then is you spend so much time crafting your message that months go by, and there is no recovery from what appears to the public as almost a cover-up. So that's part one. So quickly get out there, what happened. It may make sense to frame some of the efforts you've made. It may make sense to frame how it came in. Next thing is it's important to say, and here's what we're going to do about it. This is on us. We were having a little conversation earlier about contracting with third-party providers, and the old models of contract were, well, if there's a cyber breach, we want to make sure the contract that we can point the finger at you. And in the end, the public doesn't care who's liable. It's their data. Government is at fault. So quickly, accurately, and tell them what are we going to do to try to prevent this from happening again.
Martin.
One thing important when something bad happened to your environment, if it's this a city or a corporation, is you need to be transparent. Something is happening. Yes, of course, there's going to be a communication plan, and there's going to be lawyers and a lot of people analyzing what we need to say. The thing is, we need to say something. If something bad happened, we need to tell the public. Whatever is said, that's up to the plan, but we cannot lie. If we know it's a cyber attack, if we know for sure it's a cyber attack, we need to say it probably faster than we cannot wait to say it. We need to say it as soon as we know about it for sure. Because the citizen, well, for a city, the citizen, they expect us to be honest. Because trust is built by honesty. So we always need to be transparent when we can do it. Of course, if we wait 2 weeks to explain what happens, to me it's not transparency. And with all the law that we have in Quebec, the loi d'accès à l'information, the information access law, I think it's in English, so they can, journalists and so on, they can request access to a lot of information. They can ask questions. The journalists can ask questions to the communication team at the City of Montreal. So we always need to be, we are prepared. All the answers are already prepared if we have a question. So the goal is always to be transparent. Do not hide, because somebody somewhere will find about it. And like you said, if you don't do anything, it costs you more to recover than being transparent at the not the very beginning, but at the beginning.
Actually, would any one of you have a specific example on how you properly responded to make sure that you have still the public trust and you took action after, and like an example that someone can take back today?
Well, it did not happen yet at the City of Montreal, but it happened to Montréal now. So when we knew about it, when we knew that something bad happened, well, of course, we convened everybody and we decided, okay, what is happening? What will happen? So we analyzed everything on the dark web. We checked on the hacker site in the underweb. So as soon as as we knew that something bad happened, they decided. They decided on the communication plan. So I think something bad happened, and then we had like 25 days before it went public. So we knew that we had at least 15 days to create the plan. And since once the information was leaked to the public, to the dark web, we needed to inform, in English, it's the Commission d'accès à l'information. It's an agency in Quebec that when something bad happened with personal information, we need to inform the government agency. So when they were sure, not us, but when Montréal were sure that something bad happened with the personal information, well, it's the law. They needed to inform that commission, that agency. So all the dates were really done, were already decided. It was stuck in stone. So if we discovered the data, then the day afterward, we needed to inform the Commission d'accès à l'information. Afterward, it was a communication plan in the local papers. Afterward, it was probably an email to employee and so on. So everything was decided between the first day that they discovered something happened and once the data was leaked.
So bring the right people around the table as well when something like that happens.
Bring lawyers.
Bring lawyers. Let's talk about AI. Artificial intelligence is becoming more present in urban systems, but AI itself can introduce new vulnerabilities. What are the most pressing risks associated with AI in the public sector, and how can cities manage and control these risks responsibly? So Fred, do you want to start because you have an experience with that?
I do. I'm not going to give you an answer. I can tell you where where we think we're headed with it. And, you know, I was fortunate in some ways around this. I left the public sector CIO seat when ChatGPT was still just a cute toy and it would write poems. So the full onslaught was not something I've experienced sitting in the chair, but as the work, and I may get a chance to later talk about the public-private partnership I'm involved with to support governments, but we have many states, locals, and higher eds who leverage our services, and we sort of see ourselves as a convener as well. And so we've brought a number of executives together this spring and said, everybody's talking AI, how can we help you? And, you know, the first conversations were boil the ocean, it's a monstrous conversation. We kind of slimmed it down to the products they're buying and what do they need to know? And so the concerns on this particular front are, I've bought a product, I have a contract, and somewhere during the life of it, AI appears and I don't know. That's the first thing. So what are they worried about? They're worried about the obvious, what is going into that AI? Is it our citizens' information? Where is that information going? Is it being logged somewhere completely different and violating privacy laws? And by the way, we want our citizens to trust us, so if we really need to pay attention. And the other, so they wanted to talk a little bit about, for us to come up with guidance around really procurement as well as technical guidelines as to what it means to bring AI in. We're looking at things like our existing cyber frameworks that you would think would capture some of the where is data going should be within some of these structures. But the next one was trustworthiness. And just for clarity, trustworthiness isn't I trust the vendor. The trustworthiness is if AI is making decisions, say, about critical services to our citizens, is it making the decisions based on some bias that we don't know about? Is it, right, so when they start to talk trustworthiness, it's the hallucinations and other sort of things that could impact the decision-making you're using it for. So these 2 points are really critical from a government perspective, thinking about adopting AI. Is it safe? Is it private? and do we trust the judgment? So we've started some task forces where we're bringing in, at the behest of these, this sort of executive council, where we're bringing in privacy experts. We will have cyber experts review frameworks and say, what do we think is handled already within these frameworks? And as well as bringing some attorneys in to talk about straight up procurement language and sort of the requirements of, if you've bought a product, here's language you should be dropping into that contract. So that's the start.
Martin.
To me, the risks are twofold. First of all, I think there's an internal risk, and second, there's an external risk. The internal risk is the lack of visibility, meaning, like you said, there's a lot of AI product in the market, there's a lot of AI product in the Wild West, but how do they work? How are the decision making, how are the decision made? We don't know how it works in the black box, so when or if we use AI in our own systems, what are they doing? How are they taking that path or taking that road or deciding on closing that computer and so on? So it's to me, the greatest internal risk is the lack of visibility on how it works internally, because, well, it's proprietary, and honestly, if you follow a lot about the LLM and all the AI stuff, even the scientists that created ChatGPT, they don't really know how it works. They just figured out a little bit how the internal system works, but they really don't know. But of course, there's a lot of threat and opportunities, so the external risk is the threat from the hackers, from the nation-state hacker. They have, well, I don't, but they do. They have unlimited budget, so they can create a lot of AI attacking tools, and we're not ready, not as a city of Montreal, but as everybody in the technological world, we're not really ready for what they are gonna do, because they're gonna have tools that can discover your vulnerabilities probably 1,000 times faster than the best hacker. So even though all of the companies, even the city of Montreal, we have vulnerabilities, we patch them and so on, but they can discover that probably faster than we can patch them. So there's a lot of threats in the outside. And the thing is, when that happens, with all the tools that they're going to use, they're going to be able to leak data, and probably we will not even know about it, because they're going to be able to go inside the AI tools that we use. A lot of companies, they use LLMs like ChatGPT, Copilot, and so on, but other companies, they use LLM that they download from, what's the Hugging Faces. The website Hugging Face, if you go there, there's tons of LLM. All the big companies, they give out their LLM on open source, but there's a lot of LLM there that are not created by corporate, like Meta and Google and so on. So hackers are creating LLMs, they're uploading it to Hugging Face. Companies, they download this LLM, and then whatever happens, what happens is when you use your data, it goes out to somewhere else. I won't name the country, but what we need to remember is November 2022. What happened in November 2022? Well, ChatGPT. Before November 2022, we're June 9, so it's about not even 3 years ago. When we talked about AI before that date, it was for very clever people, for coders, for geeks, let's say, and nerds. But today, AI, it's used by my father. He is 80 years old. My mother is 82 years old. Everybody uses AI. There's AI, I think, in their microwave. So everything changed in November 2022. So to answer part of your question, what we did at the City of Montreal, starting that date, we realized, okay, something is happening. Something is happening quite fast. So we decided we need to create something to not control, but govern AI inside the City of Montreal. So we did 3 things. The first one is we created the directive to how to use AI inside the City of Montreal. So a directive is something that the executive can approve, and then we can send it to everybody inside the administration. About 6 months afterward, we created the, in English, it's the AI implementation strategy of the City of Montreal. So it's a public document that explains how we're going to implement everything AI inside the city. And it's really written for the public, for the citizen. So it says basically that we're going to use AI ethically, we're going to use AI by minimizing the risk and so on. And the last thing that we're doing, and we're starting in 10 days, we're going to have our first AI governance committee at the City of Montreal. And what do we do in this committee? Well, we're going to analyze everything that's going to happen when we talk about AI at the City of Montreal. We're going to prioritize, choose where we're going to invest, and our part, the cybersecurity, of course, we're going to analyze the risk of using AI, what kind of data we're going to use to train the model, how it's going to be done, how do we protect it, can we try to hack it, can we hack it? So those are the 3 things that we did, and I'm really happy that in 10 days we're going to have our first committee inside the City of Montreal, administration of the City of Montreal.
It's a really good introduction to my next question, because what you're saying also, it's very important that your employees are also aware on how to use AI and what information you prompt ChatGPT with, because it's the security of the organization as well. So it starts with the human. So cybersecurity is not just a technical issue, it's also a human one. How can we promote digital inclusion within cybersecurity policies, particularly in vulnerable or marginalized communities? Fred, would you like to start?
I would. This has been so important for us. I mean, my time I was 24 years at the University of Maine system too, and how we were preparing our students, thinking about they were going into roles where cyber was going to matter, but it wasn't part of our curriculum at the time, to the state. And then there was, in my time in both of those public entities, there was a lot of work with community partners. There's a lot of nonprofits out there who are focused on various demographics, from folks who have disabilities, and the number is somewhere up near 25%, the percentage of a population that has a disability and can't use some of the technology unless it's so oriented. I think of great programs, the literacy volunteers who have chapters all over my state who have raised money, and they get tablets to help people to read on the tablet, but also teach them literacy skills from shopping to fishing and all the things they need to watch for. And at the end of their one-on-one tutoring, they get to keep the tablet. So there's these little sort of grassroots kinds of organizations that are great. Now, how do you pull that all together? And during COVID, the prior administration passed a lot of money, including some that went out it was recovery and infrastructure and jobs, and they put a lot of money into expanding fiber across all 50 states. Great, unprecedented funding. I sat on the public board that was allocating all of this, and one of the things the administration did is said, by offering this to every home, we are also exposing every home. And we also, so there's the cyber element, there's the accessibility element of making sure if we make technology available that people can use it and use it safely. And so the requirements of that grant actually had a percentage that must go to these kinds of efforts. So it wasn't pure fiber on the poles and electronics, it was training programs, and a lot of these community nonprofit organizations really rose to the occasion to say, how can we use some of that funding? How can we help you disperse the funding? And so it didn't, the sort of the best cases I saw, it didn't really turn into one big government built the program and rolled it out to everyone. It was leveraging partnerships. I don't know the persistence of those funds and what we'll see in the future, but the model was a recognition that cyber and access was a big deal and enough to put a lot of taxpayer dollar behind it.
So as you know, the IT group in the City of Montreal, we don't work really closely with the citizens. What we do is, through Montréal 2030, there's a lot of initiative in this strategy. We work with other services from the City of Montreal, like the Service de Développement Économique. So it's the economical investment service at the City of Montreal. They invest in cyber conference, they invest in CyberCap, they invest in CyberEco. So we help them when they ask us. Of course, our goal is, our mission is not to work with the citizens, but to work toward Montréal 2030 and help them create services to the citizens. So that's how we do it in the IT group.
Oh, very interesting. So let's talk about actually talent in the next generation. So in the global context of cybersecurity talent shortage, how can we accelerate the training of qualified next generation talent? And what role can local governments and businesses play together in building a diverse and sustainable cybersecurity ecosystem? Martin.
It's almost the same answer as the previous question. So of course you talk about talent shortage, but there's also talent competition. So when I want to hire people, there's a competition with all the other companies that wants to get the same talent as myself. So what we need to do is, what we're doing is we invest in the local ecosystem to help build out talent. So we invest in conference, like I said, and we invest in NPO, non-profit organization, like your organization for high school student. So we create a cybersecurity, you create a cybersecurity mentality and so on. And we invest in CyberEco, which is a local group here in Montreal to promote startup companies in cybersecurity. So by doing so, of course, we don't get the talent right in our organization, but we get part of the talent by using their services when we can. We get part of the talents by using their products when we can, of course. And what we're trying to do is to work with university to change the curriculum. I know you worked in universities, and it doesn't change on a dime. It takes more than 1 week to change a curriculum, probably years. So when I see the cybersecurity curriculum in the universities around Montreal, they're good. Of course, they're good. But they need to change, and they need to think about the future. They need to think about what's going to happen in the cybersecurity world with AI, with everybody that can be a hacker. Right now, you can go on YouTube. You take like 2 or 3 days to understand something, and you have the hacking tools to create a lot of damage. So we're trying to influence the curriculum at the universities.
But I have a question before Fred, before you answer, and it's a question for both of you, because we have mixed messages. Is it true that there is a shortage of talent, or is it like a movement of like, we need more talent here in cybersecurity, then more talent there? Like we have numbers throwing at us, like, oh, we need 25%, we're missing 25% workforce. And is it the same in the States than it is in Canada?
I've seen it post-pandemic. Before the pandemic, a lot of people were talking with about that with Fred. A lot of people, everybody was working in the offices, in the office building and so on, from first floor up to the 50th floor. With the pandemic, everybody's working, or a lot of people are working at home. So there's more threats because they connect their computer on their home network. So we need more people to be able to analyze what's happening in our landscape. So yes, there's a shortage of talent, and also the technology are going so fast that what you learn out of school and when you come out of school, it's not obsolete, but almost.
Fred, what do you see in the States?
So, first off, same. But
what he said.
yeah, and so we've seen a lot of numbers, you know, the 400,000, you know, open jobs for which there are not students coming through. There's another factor that maybe isn't encompassed totally in those numbers, which is the need and the expected salaries of a cyber individual. Yes. So you turn around and say, I work for, you know, I'm a local public school system, and I can maybe afford to pay $40,000 for a cyber professional, and they're expecting over 100.
A lot.
Yeah. So there is this shortage, and so there's the two elements of bringing people in, capturing them potentially earlier in their career in public service and saying, you know, maybe I'm only going to be able to keep them for a few years. They're going to go off and make big bank working for someone else, and then maybe they'll come back in their last 5-10 years of the career with a healthy bank account, and they'll want to do some public service. But the partnerships, again, I mean, I look at organizations like CyberCap, and I say that's exactly what is needed, is partnerships that look like that. You know, I mentioned this state and local cyber grant program that created some facilitation across a whole state from the state government, but with all its various political subdivisions. And because of that bonding, we have started to see some new models come out where you see a state facilitating the partnership between local governments, universities, and other nonprofits. And I would call out the state of Arizona as a place that's doing a lot of movement, where they're saying, and maybe we can even staff like a security operations center to support the local governments with these students who maybe early in their career, upon graduation, may go work for the local governments for a while. And they're trying to pull together an entire ecosystem that's bringing both services and support in a way that will grow the students. And, you know, I hearken back to, you know, Mark, when you say you're not going to get cyber in the curriculum overnight, you're not. And
exactly.
So, you know, that's where, you know, for those in higher ed, I mean, we've been talking about experiential learning and hands-on learning for an awful long time, the value of internships. And, you know, there are nonprofits, certainly in the state of Maine. I used to get in front of a technology one where they would gather some of the big private sector firms who would come summer of, you know, the junior year, there'd be the fair. Students would go off and do interns. The danger to higher ed was they would get a big paycheck and they wouldn't come finish their degree. But it gave them amazing experience in the field, prepped them with both the academic piece and the hands-on piece. And we see some great stuff happening with cyber that looks like that. But again, harness the community and folks like CyberCap.
Yeah, I have a curveball for you.
Oh, wow.
You talk about talent shortage and
Yes.
so on, but no, it's not a planted question. Your organization, you know, you're doing stuff with, well, kids. Well, I mean, it's 12 years old and older.
Yeah.
But exactly what are you doing for them, with them,
Well,
about them?
we have two thoughts. So for cybersecurity, we're actually now in primary school where we want to make sure that the kids are using technology in an ethical way, and they know how to use it properly, and they know how to deal with mean comments and what happened when you see someone having, again, critiques online, and how do you handle that, and who do you go to? And then for high school students, we see already that they don't know how to use technology. They know how to use their phone, but they don't know how to use technology properly. So with AI, again, how do you teach them ethically how to use AI, and what is quality of information and transparency and inclusion? So that's for school system. But for the young adults, we welcome dropout kids. We want to teach them, we want to make them like junior cybersecurity analyst or AI programmer, because now they can. So we see that very positively for us at CyberCap, because it helps those that were excluded from the tech to be able to find a job rapidly with good ethic in them. Because when you are a marginalized kid, well, you're going to look at the bad way of doing it, so the dark side of cybersecurity, because you can make money really rapidly. So we're trying to offer them a different path. But thank you for the question.
No problem.
So we have 1 minute left. Do you have any thought to conclude this conversation that could be helpful to the participants?
Well, all this AI talk, I will be interested when AI can figure out how to give me hair. But beyond that, you know, we were hoping to get to a question about international cooperation in cyber, and I think, Martin, you really hit the nail on the head. We're all on the same side when it comes to cyber. No competition. You know, we have developed, the nonprofit I'm with has developed a standard that governments, local, state, and higher ed are using that is free to them, controlled by them, with that sense of nobody should be doing it alone. It is too hard, it is too expensive, and you know, I appreciate, you know, Martin, I think you guys are doing great stuff here, so really love the conversation. Thank you for letting me come up.
Yeah, the thing is, it's always a race. In cybersecurity, it's a race of us versus them. The good guy versus the bad guy. If we want the good guys to win, like I said, there is no competition in cybersecurity. Whatever happens in the south, whatever happens in the up north, there's no boundaries. Everybody needs to help each other, even competitors. Banks, in the group where I am, in the insurance companies and the banks, they work together. Of course, they're in competition to get that client and this one, but I'm pretty sure bank number one doesn't want to see bank number two go bankrupt. So they work together because, of course, if bank number two knows something, bank number one wants to know about it. So my closing words is the same one. There's no competition in cybersecurity. None.
Well, thank you very much. It was a very insightful conversation.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. This was a very interesting